So we're in the midst of Zach LaVine trade extravaganza, with the latest team reportedly being interested in Zach LaVine being the Philadelphia 76ers. We're going to talk a little bit about what that deal could potentially look like, but why this rumor just points to the fact that nobody knows what the hell is going on with the Zach LaVine trade front. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Sir Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform that we're on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content, and we might as well change the name of the channel to Zach LaVine Trade Central, because as I report on every bit of news that comes out here, it's a different team every single day that is reportedly newly interested in Zach LaVine or Zach would want to go to. And I think really what this highlights is that nobody really has a good read on the Zach LaVine trade market. I think that when you hear like kind of the conflicting reports, right? We hear things like, oh, the Chicago Bulls want to win now. And then Darnell Mayberry in his most recent article says the Chicago Bulls are actually against getting future draft capital. They're hesitant for that. They want win now talent. But every deal that we've basically heard for Zach LaVine includes picks that go out to 2028 or 2029. Right now, every bit of the trade news you hear about Zach LaVine, while I don't doubt that some of these reporters and analysts are getting little words and mumblings of things going on, but I think it really just points to nobody truly knows everything that's going on with Zach LaVine. Now, most recently, the Philadelphia 76ers, there's a comment by Shams where a lot of other reporters and news outlets took that as the Philadelphia 76ers are preparing to make a move for Zach LaVine, which that's not really what was said. What was actually said was this.
Shams, they obviously made the big move, got rid of James Harden. Is there anything else in the horizon for them?
The Sixers are continuing to look at the marketplace because, Chandler, you look at their asset pool, 3 first-round draft picks they can trade. They have a bunch of contracts, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum. So Zach LaVine, OG Anunoby, those are 2 names to keep an eye on as guys that Philadelphia has monitored, has a level of interest in. And like Lou said, Joel Embiid has taken control of this team. I think he's dominating. It's clear. And what we saw from him going into the year was he was trying to see what this team would be. He was trying to see how would Tyrese Maxey come into the year, Tobias Harris. He was really at the beginning of the year just looking around, letting guys ease into the season. And they had Kelly Oubre start the year off. He was averaging 17 points a game. Then once he got hurt and he missed time, you saw Joel Embiid take his game to another level. He recognized there was a scoring punch that was missing in that starting lineup, and he's taken off. Another thing to keep an eye on is Tobias Harris. He's a guy in the expiring year of his deal, $39 million this season, and he's been the 1-2 punch at different points. A lot of teams are keeping an eye on him and seeing what exactly happens with him. The Sixers want to keep him around. They know how important he is.
And in that, you can see that Shams specifically said, like, circling around, have some potential interest in Zach and OG Anunoby. Now, this is not much different than what we heard earlier at the beginning of the season. We heard that the Philadelphia 76ers could have interest in OG Anunoby, or it could be Zach LaVine, but that the Philadelphia 76ers was leaning more towards OG because of his versatility and what he can look like next to Tyrese Maxey. Now, of course, with a new comment, a new video, you're going to get new interest, new rumors. And so that has now put it to that the Philadelphia 76ers could be interested in the Zach LaVine move. Now, I don't necessarily deny that, right? But when you hear a team is monitoring, right, you heard it out of his own mouth, that's very different from somehow some people have now reported on it that they are preparing an offer for Zach LaVine. Very different things, and that's why I always tell you guys, go and read the original article or watch the original video, because some of these news outlets be fucking capping. Let's just put it frank. And yet, listen, it's Chicago Bulls Central. We're not part of any network but our own network that I own, so I can say whatever the hell I want to say here. So a lot of the outlets that you hear things in, it's honestly, at this point, yes, there's a combination of Zach LaVine's name and the trade drama around Zach LaVine being at its utmost and its highest, and that's going to get clicks from Bulls fans, from the respective fans of other teams. But right now, guess what? Nobody really knows what's going on in the Zach LaVine front. Even to say that there's no trade market. When you hear people say, like, there's no trade market, but yet we're now on team number 5 or 6 that reportedly has interest, guess what? That's a market. That's a market. And so even like some of you fans that say, oh, well, you can't move Zach LaVine's deal. Nobody wants that contract. That's false. It's just what the price that they would have to pay for it in, and will the Bulls just move it? I can guarantee you right now, if the Bulls just wanted to move Zach, to just get him up out the building, they could move him tomorrow. They can find a trade that's going to get it done if they just wanted to move him. So there's a market there. The biggest question is what the Bulls are willing to accept back for that market. And hearing in Shams what he talked about, they got 3 first-round picks back in the trade for James Harden, and basically they're trying to use that with their expiring contracts to potentially make a move and swing for a name to try to help them in their run now of playing pretty well in the Eastern. Well, not pretty well, playing damn good. They have Joel Embiid, who's now playing at an MVP caliber level. Yet again, he's leading the league in scoring. All these things are true. The Philadelphia 76ers right now sit at 3rd in the Eastern Conference. They are a game and a half behind. A game and a half behind the Milwaukee Bucks and 2 full games behind the Boston Celtics. And so I'm sure they're looking at it and saying, what if we need just a little bit more to be able to get over these teams? And so monitoring is different from shopping for or preparing an offer for. The Philadelphia 76ers basically already know what they have to offer. You don't really have to prepare an offer for that. In Per Sham's video, they're a little bit hesitant to move on from Tobias Harris. They kind of want him to stay there. That's kind of different than what we've heard early in the season, but let's just say that that's the case. They want to keep on Tobias Harris. That would basically leave them with Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum's contract, maybe even Robert Covington if they're getting something back in the right type of package. Now, that's more than enough contracts to match a deal of the size of Zach LaVine's. They can match that money relatively easy if that's what they wanted to do for almost any player at the NBA, max level or not. And so it comes down to the picks. And so when we hear things like the Chicago Bulls are looking for win now players, Paul Reed was mentioned in an earlier type deal that the Chicago Bulls would be interested in a player like that. But guess what? The Bulls aren't getting Maxey back. So you Bulls fans that keep saying things like, oh, well, we can't do a trade like this unless we're getting Maxey, unless we're getting Zion, unless we're getting Pascal, we can't do the deal. It's not happening. That market is not there. And so it'll come down to, are the Bulls then willing to come down off what we've heard of the future draft capital not necessarily being the jewel of the trade? And that's what it would be in a potential trade with the Philadelphia 76ers, unless they look at a Paul Reed, who maybe they can get back as being a future asset for him, even though, Paul Reed has shown some promise, right? Like, I don't want to act like he's a world beater or anything like that, but at his age of being 24 years old, he kind of fits the timeline right now of many of the young Chicago Bulls that are playing well. Maybe you can make a conversation there. Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum, nobody's looking at these guys as moving the needle in any type of trade, or Robert Covington at this point in their careers. That's not to say they're absolutely terrible players that can't contribute in role-playing type roles, but they aren't the ones that you're looking at as the thing that you're aiming to get back in a trade for Zach LaVine. So I really think when it comes down to it, as you hear and we talk about more of these deals, more of these rumors surrounding Zach LaVine and how it's kind of covered and things like that, it just further highlights the fact that nobody knows exactly what right now is going on with the Zach LaVine trade front. Nobody. If anybody knows the most of it at the end of the day, it would probably be K.C. Johnson, who then reported that there's a world in still which Zach LaVine does end up staying here until the end of the season. And K.C. Johnson being somebody who travels with the Bulls and is their beat reporter, I trust that more than trusting some of these national media outlets, pundits, and commentators on what's going on right now with Zach LaVine and a trade market or anything like that. So when it comes down to it, I just look at it like this. If Zach LaVine is moved, I don't think the Philadelphia 76ers are going to offer some, but again, it depends on what that market looks like. But from what we've heard very conflicting things. Maybe it does happen, maybe it doesn't. But I think when it comes down to it is that how willing are the Chicago Bulls to come down on whatever value they hold Zach LaVine in, because there's a high probability they're not getting that deal back for him. Now, with that said, right, the Philadelphia 76ers, we talk about the assets they could potentially have. I don't see them as great trade partners. We did have an article come out today about some of the best deals that the Bulls could potentially get, as I get tongue-tied, that the Bulls can potentially get for Zach LaVine. This comes from an article from Zach Buckley. And in this one, he looked at trades for Zach LaVine. He listed it as 8 as far as the buzz around it and his contract. And this is the deal that Zach Buckley presented. It's Zach LaVine and Andre Drummond to the New York Knicks for R.J. Barrett, Evan Fournier, and a 2024 first-round pick that is top 10 protected that's actually coming from the Dallas Mavericks. Now, this isn't a terrible deal, but I think this kind of highlights how far this deal has come. Keep in mind, last year, the New York Knicks reportedly offered R.J. Barrett, Isaiah Hardenstein, 2 first-round picks, and a first-round pick swap. And that just shows how far this has come down. Now, the pairing of a Jalen Brunson, Zach LaVine backcourt is cool. I haven't really heard much as far as the Knicks having legitimate interest in Zach LaVine for quite a while. I actually think the last thing that we heard is that they're not really interested in the Zach LaVine market now. With Mitchell Robinson going down, maybe Andre Drummond and Zach LaVine gets them back interested in it. But you got to think, would they be willing to offer R.J. Barrett, who's a young player that's on a way better contract than Zach LaVine's, for that type of move? And I just don't know. I always like to give it to you guys real and talk about the realities of it. Now, I don't think this is an absolutely terrible deal for Zach LaVine. Is it the deal that we initially thought we may be getting for Zach? No. But RJ Barrett is a player that's averaging 18.5 points per game. He's doing that on only 14 shots per game, which is fairly efficient, shooting the ball 42% from the field and 34% from three. He's also chipping in 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and right under a half a steal, right over a half a steal per game. Again, not perfect, but he's a young player again, 23 years old, and that we've talked about here, 23 years old. There's still left room to improve, so kind of resets that clock. He's somebody that fits in the same age range as Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, so maybe there's something to be set up for that, but I don't know if that's likely. Again, this is kind of a speculative piece from Zach Buckley, so he's not reporting that this is something that they've been offered, just a speculation on what the Bulls can get if a potential trade's there for Zach LaVine on the market. And then he also had one that was offered that theoretically for DeMar DeRozan to send him to the Miami Heat. It's DeMar and Alex Caruso to the Miami Heat. I'm not even going to get into that deal because what we've heard, the Bulls ain't looking to move Alex Caruso, and they shouldn't. So that is what it is. But let me know what you guys think, man. Do you believe, like I do, kind of how more of these things come out for? It's just people just don't know what the fuck's going on with the Zach LaVine trade drama. They don't know. And if they're telling you or reporting it like they know, it's all bullshit. And we got to wait to see what the Bulls end up actually getting back and if it's the value that fans are going to appreciate. But let me know what you guys think. As always, down below. Make sure you're following the channel at Bulls Central Pod as well. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Only about 45% of the people that watch our videos aren't subscribed, so just double check. Hit that subscribe button. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.